محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. The influential believer. It's an interesting title. Influential from influence, the one who affects people or has an effect on people, or he influences people. The khutbah began with the following introduction, that Allah created the creation to establish worship and to maintain His rights, and He has prepared good deeds and a reward in the life to come. As Allah Azza wa Jalla said, and I have not created jinn and ins except to worship me. I have not created the jinn and mankind except to worship me. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla further made the worldly life, happiness, also conditional to the doing of good deeds along with Iman. And he quoted an ayah here, which I don't think he quoted on the minbar, so I will skip it as well. Ala kulli hal, so whosoever has this correct faith, accompanied with good deeds, shall inevitably lead a happy life. He will have a nice, joyful, comfortable, satisfactory life, provided that these two conditions are met. Then he went on to say that this description of Iman brings about pleasure, satisfaction, mercy, tranquility, and guidance in this life and the life to come. This is regardless of whether this believing person is from a noble lineage or he is a regular person, regardless of whether he is young or old, whether all of these, worldly criteria or worldly categorization don't make a difference. If you believe and do righteous deeds, then what you've been promised shall come to you, and vice versa. He went on to say, who is then this influential believer? He is the believer who is hasting towards good deeds and who strives to rectify and invite people to Allah. He aids and assists in piety and righteousness, and he commands what is good and he forbids what is evil. He strives to increase his knowledge and action. He strives to rectify his own condition. And this one is better and superior in the sight of Allah than the person who is a believer to himself only. He does not go that extra mile to affect others around him. He just does his faridah, he prays his 5 salawat, and he fasts the month of Ramadan, and he may give a sadaqah every now and then, occasionally when he sees a beggar, and khalas. It ends right there. And that person is in no way close to the first one. And the Shaykh will prove it from the textual evidence, the variation between the two. He said, I will narrate onto you a few narrations which prove the favoritism of the influential believer versus the one who is confined to himself. First and foremost, it's an ayah, even though it's in the context of fighting in the cause of Allah, it is actually more general, and it encompasses the concept of struggling in Allah's way, whether it is fighting in a warfare or without it. Allah Azza wa Jal said, they are not equal, those who remain amongst the believers. Those who did not engage in fighting, those who stayed behind. They are not equal, those who remain behind among the believers, except those who have an excuse, except the people of excuses, and those who strive and struggle in the cause of Allah with their wealth and themselves. Allah has favored those who struggle in His cause over those who remain behind in a degree. And each Allah has promised goodness. And verily Allah favored those who strive in His cause with a great reward over those who remain seated, with a great reward. Various degrees from Him of mercy and forgiveness, or forgiveness and mercy, and ever is Allah all forgiving and merciful. So this ayah mentions believers who engaged in fighting versus believers who stayed behind. And Allah is saying they are not equal. They are not equal, those who remain versus those who strove with their wealth and themselves. And Allah has favored them in this particular manner. So that's one evidence about the variation between the two. Secondly, of course, an exception, or those who are exempt, is a person who is physically unable. Someone who was handicapped or something of the sort. Back then, they were not able to engage in the fighting, so they were excused by Allah Azza wa Jal. But the one who has the resolve, the niyyah, if the niyyah was sound and sincere, then even though this person may be unable, he will still get the reward of those who fought in Allah's cause. And the evidence for that is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by or collected by Muslim, wherein he said, whosoever asks Allah for martyrdom, to be a martyr, then Allah Azza wa Jal will grant him the degree or the status of the martyrs even if he dies in his own bed. Meaning he was unable to do it, but he had this sincere niyyah. Had he been given a chance, he would have done something. He and the one who actually goes out are equal. And even if he were to die in his bed, Allah will give him the reward of martyrdom. Versus the one who doesn't have this niyyah, or even worse, the one who could but does not. That's a whole other discussion. And the Prophet ﷺ said, in reinforcing this concept, the strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, and in each there's goodness. The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, and in each there's goodness. But Allah loves the strong believer, and He has more goodness in it. So then the Shaykh said, this hadith is an indication that the one who's stronger in his taqwa, in his supplication, in his sincerity, in him seeking the lawful sustenance, by fulfilling the commands and staying away from the prohibitions, seeking knowledge. Leave the thing alone, Ya Mussab. Stop playing with the paper. Seeking knowledge and doing all kinds of things is better than the person who is weak in belief, even though in both there is goodness. Now the Shaykh said that the hadith is not intended to refer to physical strength. Even though I've heard from other scholars otherwise. They understand that the hadith by default is referring obviously to the strong in Iman, but they do not negate the fact that it may also include the one who's strong in his build. Meaning, there is a virtue if someone being in shape or someone being muscular or being physically fit, fi sabilillah. Not for showing off or for flexing his muscles or whatever, but if that intent is to be strong in obeying Allah, and if the situation arises where he needs to defend Islam and the Muslims, then this is virtuous, and this is beneficial, and is better than the weak believer who is unable to engage in anything. So even though that is not the asl in the intent of the hadith, it is included and understood from the wording, because qawi refers to physical strength. The wife of Musa alayhi salam, or one of the two daughters, what did she describe? She said, the best of the people you hire is al-qawiyul amin. Because Musa alayhi salam, they say, he lifted the lid of the well with one hand, a big rock, with one hand. And when he punched that other guy, who was fighting with the man from Israel, he killed him. And some of the scholars say he went like this to him. So Musa alayhi salam was a strong man. And that is virtuous in this particular regard. Ala kulli hal. Another point which proves this point is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. So the one who learns the Quran is like the weak believer who is restricted to himself. He's not influential. The one who learns the Quran and teaches it is the one who's actually influential, and he is better. He's the best of people. Again, proving the same idea that we should not be closed in on ourselves, and we should go out and help and be there for the Muslims to the best of our ability. So the Shaykh said that Allah then loves the believer who's mixing with the people, who's affecting the people positively, who's influential, the one who sacrifices his time for aiding this deen and for granting victory and asking Allah to grant victory to Islam. He does not only do the faridah, and he's not sufficed with that. Rather, he's striving to rectify the condition of the Muslims. If he sees a fitna arising, he tries to calm it down. He engages with the people, he speaks to the people, he hears what they have to say, and so on and so forth. Then he went on to say, this particular kind of believer is also one who is jealous over the Muslims in general. And so what happens to the Muslim bothers him, it affects him. And we are now in a state of, we just don't care. Illa man rahim Allah. But Allah musta'an. We're supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be affected by the various situations that the Muslims are going through in the world. And so that kind of believer is of that kind of nature. He's always making dua for the believers, whether they are alive or they have already passed away. And an evidence for that is the description of Allah Azza wa Jal to the believers. And those who come after them, they say, Our Lord, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in faith. And do not make in our hearts any enmity, any hatred, any envy towards those who believe. Verily you are the most passionate, the most merciful. And this ayah is in Surah Al-Hashr. Secondly, he is keen over delivering goodness to the believers. In any situation, he's given a chance. And he acquires the virtuous character and traits. As for the introvert believer, the one who's just myself, he said it many times, nafsi, I don't care what happens to everybody else. Yalla, al-muhim, what is for me. I do my salah, I pay my zakah, fast Ramadan, then the rest of the ummah can figure out its own issues. I don't need to be involved in anything, charitable cause, any organization, meetings, nothing. He just wants to be to himself. As for this person, then the Shaykh basically was criticizing that kind of person. And that even though he may be okay, because he's fulfilling at least the obligations, he will be regretful tremendously on Yawm al-Qiyamah. He will be regretful on Yawm al-Qiyamah on all the opportunities of goodness he missed out on. Of course, this is all while understanding, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden a soul beyond its scope, because there is another extreme among these people. Some who don't do anything and some who overdo things. He wants to be good. So anything that comes, okay, yes, I will do it for you. Yes, no problem. And then he has all these promises and nothing gets fulfilled. So if you work in da'wah, you will learn when to say, I can't. And it's better for you to say, I can't, and have the people look for someone else, rather than saying, I will do it for you, then leave them waiting for you. And many people out of good intent fall into this trap. And it backfires. Say, Fulan, if he tells you he's going to do it, forget it. Even though this person may be involved in da'wah, this is a musibah. If the people of da'wah are going to be, the people will lose trust in them, then who else is left? Therefore, if you are involved in some sort of da'wah, know your limits. If you can't do it, tell the people up front, no. Or I will try but no promise. If I can't do it, don't come later, tell me, brother, you said, brother, I told you from the beginning, I cannot do it. I will try my best. So we have to know also how to set the priorities. You may have other obligations, and someone says, come do this and come do that. Your time doesn't allow it. Does not mean that you don't care. It just means that you're unable. That's totally fine. You're not expected to do everything for everybody all the time. So he was mentioning the reality of this person is that, how did I get here? Yeah. So, this person will come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the one who's the opposite of the one who's to himself. He will come and he will find that, the money he gave there and the reminder he gave in this particular place and the enjoining what is good, forbidding what is evil, all of these will be collected. And on Yawm al-Qiyamah he will see these mountains of good deeds which he would not know exactly where they came from, but they will be a result of the accumulation of these reminders, enjoining good, forbidding evil, involving himself with the Muslims in general. The person will see that on Yawm al-Qiyamah. We ask Allah to make us among those. He said in the second part of the khutbah, well, he didn't mention that from the minbar. Ma'alish, because there are some things here which were not said there. Now, just to give you an example, he said that the effectiveness of good deeds which you don't even think about, the smile. When you smile in the face of your brother, this is a sadaqah written for you. ابتسامك في وجه أخيك صدقة. The smile in the face of your brother is a charity. In another hadith, لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا ولو أن تلقى أخاك بوجه طلق. Do not belittle any good deed. Any good deed. Even if you were to merely meet your brother with a smiley face. Don't belittle that. Because that deed could be, look, you people go to dinner, lunch or dinner, and you got fulan, mashallah, tabarakallah, his pocket is full. 2,000 riyals, 3,000 riyals, ما في مشكلة, he pays 500 riyals for dinner for him and his friends. However, when he does so, his niyyah is no good. His niyyah is, yes, he wants to show off about his wealth. And another one, miskin, he takes him out for food and tamiz. He has 10 riyals, 15 riyals, this is his budget. But he does it sincerely, he really wants to feed the brothers. This 10, 15 riyals could be to Allah better than the 5,000 riyals of the other person. Don't belittle any good deed. Don't someone invite to say, Wallah, only VIP restaurants, but I don't go to Garmush. Don't belittle any good deed. If that's what the brother has to offer, alhamdulillah. Go for it and enjoy it, and may Allah may put a blessing in that other than what you may find elsewhere. So any good deed, give it its value. Even a smile. Even a smile. Let alone 5 riyals or 10 riyals. That's a lot of money. Sometimes. Not anymore, huh? 10 riyals is just... the people who deliver the stuff to the car. I mean, I was living back in the days, I would never have the people bring groceries to the car. I like to do it myself. Then I realized they got upset. I say, it's okay, I'm still shabab, alhamdulillah. They look at me like I'm stingy. So I feel guilty now. I said, okay, take it to the car. I gave him 1 riyal, he gave it back to me. So what? The 1 riyal is not enough anymore. So now it has to be 2 riyals and above for him just to acknowledge your existence. Give him 1 riyal, he will throw it back in your face. Mashi. But back in the days, 1 riyal, now, that was enough. Now it's not enough. Even just to deliver from the grocery to the car, it's 5 meters. Open the trunk. I mean, come on, it doesn't take that much. But anyways, I'm just giving you an example of how money has become of less value. Wallah musta'an. Now, he said at the end of this particular part, or here, he said, if you want to learn actually how to be this kind of person who's influential, just look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, because in his life was the best example of the interactive believer. His whole life was for the benefit of the Ummah ﷺ, with the exception of some things which were restricted to his family, or halal joy, which may have been there here and there, very limited and counted. The rest of his life was dedicated for the Ummah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so, he said here, this whole discussion is not restricted to men. Rather, it includes women. Okay, so everything he mentioned about the strong believer, whether it is male or female, any sister who's doing the same thing should get the same particular privilege. But of course, the da'wah for the sisters is not like the da'wah for the brothers. And many people nowadays in this kind of modernist movement, they're trying to make them one and the same. That it doesn't matter whether you are male or female, you have the same rights and the same freedom. And the truth is, this is not the case. A sister cannot stand here and give a khutbah translation. She cannot. With a bunch of brothers. If she was a sister among other sisters, go. Barakallahu fiki. But a sister addressing brothers, يعني معلش, 10 brothers are looking at a sister, يعني what are they going to look at? Unless people have lost their mind. Unless the male who's sitting there is not a male. His name is something that is male name, but he is not a male. If you're a normal male, then this is a lady. And khalas, your brain has been programmed to react a certain way unless you've lost your fitrah. And the same goes for women. So this whole idea that, come on brother, take it easy, we're all, same thing. No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, and it will never be the same thing. Sisters have restrictions. Even her voice, bil-asl is not awra. A woman may speak in the presence of men. But if she speaks a particular way, or she has a soft voice, it becomes a problem. Brothers listening to the lecture is no longer listening to the lecture. He's listening to something else now. So all these are facts we have to be aware of. So sisters, yes, go ahead and give da'wah, but know the limits. You're not a man. Otherwise, Allah would have made at least one woman a prophet. Never was a woman a prophet or a messenger. It's always been the job of men, for a reason. At the end of the khutbah, he quoted the statement of a person, the least we can say is controversial. So we don't want to say anything for him or against him. He has returned to Allah, and we ask Allah to forgive him and all the Muslims. But he quoted the statements of this person, and the statement is sound and correct, and therefore we will share it. He said, when we live for our own pleasures, then life seems to be very short. And it begins when we begin, and it ends when our life ends, our lifespan. 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever. However, when we live for an idea which is Islamic obviously, to revive something within Islam, then life seems to be long. And it will begin with the beginning of humanity, and it will end with the departure. It does not end with our departure. It begins with the beginning of humanity, and it will continue on forever, because you live for an Islamic concept. You live for an Islamic purpose, versus the one who doesn't have that. He further said, whoever lives for himself, he lives small and he dies small. Not in size, but in effect, in weight amongst the people. And whoever lives for others, meaning for the benefit of other Muslims, even if he lives a life of tiredness and fatigue and struggling, he will live big and he will die big. So which one of the two would you like to be? And then he gave examples which we can all relate to. Look at the big rulers and big kings and princes and all those of back in the days. How many of their names do we have memorized? And how many of them do we quote today? Can anyone enumerate 10 rulers from the rulers of Islam until now? Probably not. But can anyone mention 10 scholars from the scholars of Islam? Probably everyone here. Everybody knows at least the 4 imams. And you can add a few here and there which you've heard over the time. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Imam al-Dhahabi, and so on and so forth. On average, the Muslim knows 10 scholars that you never met, never gave you money, they're not your relatives, they didn't tell you, hey, mention me in front of people one day. Nothing. They didn't do anything for any of that stuff. But they live for Allah and for the deen, and therefore we mention them until today. Their memory is alive. So look at the difference between the two. The one who lived for Islam, what he will get in this life and in the life to come. And the one who lives for himself, he will get what he wants for himself, but it ends right there when he dies. So, which one do we want to be? It's a very good question. I hope we have a good answer for it. So he asked Allah to grant us all the ability to be influential and to do righteous deeds and to benefit the ummah and to make us among those who excel. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.